Hey guys, Serac here, and today I'm going to bring you an updated version of my Altergeist list with the support that was released back in Brothers of Legend. This list is really good because it's one of those decks that you get pretty much the entire deck. All the cuts I've made have pretty much come from the extra deck alone, and that they only come up in corner cases because we're running cards like Pots of Extravagance that banish them from the extra deck. So this deck is really good if you just want to buy a whole deck at once, and not make too many concessions for budget. Although, the deck will probably not earn you very many friends. Anyway, let's get into it. We have 3 copies of Altergeist Multifaker. Everyone knows Multifaker, best card in the Altergeist deck. If you activate a trap card, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then you get to special summon an Altergeist monster from your deck in defense position. Activate trap, say Imperm, get Multifaker, special summon Silkwitus. Very common Altergeist play. 3 copies of Altergeist Meluseek. Meluseek can attack directly and allows you to send a card your opponent controls to the graveyard when it inflicts battle damage, and then if it goes from the field to the graveyard, you can search one Altergeist monster from your deck. So this obviously searches your Multifaker, because you link it off into, say, Linkuriboh or Almiraj, and that helps you get the ball rolling. Remember, all of the Altergeist cards were reprinted in Maximum Gold Eldorado, so they're all really cheap now. 3 copies of Marionetta. If this is normal summon, you get to set an Altergeist trap to your spell or trap zone, and then you can target an Altergeist card you control and one in your graveyard, send the card you control to the graveyard, and special summon the other monster from your graveyard. Remember, this can send your traps as well as monsters. And remember, personal spoofing is not an Altergeist card, so you cannot set it. 2 copies of Altergeist Silkwitus. Silkwitus has a quick effect where you can return one other Altergeist card you control to the hand and then bounce one card your opponent controls. And if it goes from the field to the graveyard, target an Altergeist trap in your graveyard and add that card to your hand. Silkwitus is your main interaction on your opponent's turn outside of your traps, and there's some really cool plays you can do evolving this and Altergeist Manifestation, where you activate Altergeist Manifestation and then you chain Silkwitus to the activation of Manifestation. You'll get the special summon, Manifestation will go back to your hand, and you won't have the downside of Manifestation tying itself to the monster you resurrect. 1 Altergeist Pukari. If an Altergeist monster would be used as link material for an Altergeist monster, you can also use this card in your hand. This card helps you make Hextia really easily, as well as allowing you to climb into Brian Banshee and Memory Gant later in the game. And then if an Altergeist Link monster is summoned to your field, you get to, while this card is in your graveyard, add this card back to your hand. Can only use this effect once per duel. Still a really strong card. A nice piece of support that we got in Brothers of Legend. Again, just allowing us to make those higher Link monsters much more easily. Finally, we have 1 Altergeist Conqueror. Conqueror, obviously, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, if you control an Altergeist card, special summon this card from your hand, negate that attack, and then target one face-up card your opponent controls, negate the effects of that card while it and this monster are face-up on the field. This is another form of interaction you have. Again, very easy to search and get into your hand when you need it, and we only need 1 copy because otherwise it would just clog up our opening hands. For our hand traps, again, hand trap lineup in this deck is very flexible. We're going with Effect Veiler because Ash Blossom is far too expensive at the moment, but it is also a light spellcaster, which does come up for some of your plays. Mainly making Liner the Link Charmer. We are now playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Now, again, I'm wary on putting up Extravagance decks. Unfortunately, a lot of the Extravagance decks at the moment are the budget decks. And obviously we're getting the Alba Strike structure deck very soon. The problem with that being, if Extravagance is in there, Extravagance price will drop. If it's not in there, it will shoot up. I estimate Extravagance's price will be around the price of Imperm after the reprint, probably around £7-8 a copy. This is currently running at about £15-16 a copy. So I would recommend, if you really want to play the deck, pick them up now. they will go up if it is not reprinted. And there's a lot of good reprints in that deck that they could choose to cut, which would suck, but wouldn't be outside of Konami's remit. But anyway, it's a really good draw spell. We don't use a lot of our extra deck, so we may as well have the 3 draws. And then we play 3 copies of Pot of Duality as our other consistency piece. Again, some versions of this are also running Prosperity. We're playing Duality because it's much cheaper. Remember, you can activate Duality and Extravagance in the same turn, but you cannot special summon after you activate Duality. But it is very, very useful for smoothing out your hands, getting you that extra piece of interaction, and so on. And a lot of your special summoning with things like Multi-Faker happens on your opponent's turn anyway. For our traps, because this is a trap deck, we have 3 Personal Spoofing, shuffle 1 Altergeist card from your hand or field to the main deck, add 1 Altergeist monster from your deck to your hand. It's card trader for Altergeists that we can use on our opponent's turn, gets rid of redundant copies of traps, stuff that we bounce with Silquatus that we can then fetch from the deck with Multi-Faker. There's a lot of cool interactions you can do with Personal Spoofing. Just again, remember, this is not an Altergeist card, you cannot search it with things like Marionetta. 2 copies of Altergeist Protocol. This is the card that makes everyone want to quit when they play Altergeist. The activation and effects of Altergeist cards cannot be negated. When your opponent activates a monster effect, send 1 face-up Altergeist card you control to the graveyard, negate the activation and destroy it. Remember, you cannot send itself, but you can obviously send anything like you spent Manifestation. Again, you can use things like activating Manifestation and use it if your opponent responds to that. You can activate Protocol, send the Manifestation, and still end up special summoning. And so on. Very, very strong card. Easy to search, which is why we only need to run 2. And finally, for our Altergeist traps, we have 1 Altergeist Manifestation, which is Monster Reborn on a trap. And again, lots of ways we can bounce this back to hand and reuse it. To mitigate the downside of tying the monster that you summon to it. For our generic traps, we play 3 copies of Torrential Tribute, because sometimes nuking the board is all you really need to do. And I'm playing 3 mismatched rarities because I'm an actual monster, and because I don't know where my matched rarities are. But we know what Torrential does. It's very, very easy to proc, even if your opponent is being careful with their summoning, because cards like Multi-Faker exist. But it's very, very good, very, very easy to blow up your opponent's field. And sometimes that's all you need to do. 3 copies of Solemn Strike. Again, one of the best generic counter traps in the game. Negate monster effects, negate summons, for the measly cost of 1,500 life points. Just got a reprint as well, so it's much cheaper. So you'd be daft not to play it. 3 copies of Solemn Judgment, because sometimes you just have to say no. This deck struggles with spell and trap card interaction, so having a Solemn Judgment in your opening hand or you find off an Extravagance or a Duality is really, really useful in this deck that can sometimes just lose to an activation of a Lightning Storm. And then finally, we play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, because it's the best trap card in the game. It can be activated on if your opponent goes first. It's one of the few ways we have of interacting going second. And of course, if we draw Multi-Faker and activate this on our opponent's turn with a Multi-Faker, then we've basically won the game already, and even in spirit at least, if not actually. You know what Infip does now. You should have your copies of Infinite Impermanence if you bought the Cyber Dragon structure deck. If not, go out and buy them. They're still really easy to find. There's very little excuse for not having copies of Infinite Impermanence at the moment, and they will go up because it won't be reprinted anytime soon. So, for the extra deck is obviously lots of 2s and 3-ofs of things because we play Extravagance. But anyway, we have 2 copies of Altergeist Hextia. Gains attack equal to the attack of each Altergeist monster it points to. When a spell or trap card or effect is activated, tribute one Altergeist monster this card points to, negate the activation, destroy the card, and then if this card goes from the field to the graveyard, add an Altergeist card from your deck to your hand. Being able to search is really nice, and again, this deck struggles with spell trap interaction, so having something like that on a body that we can make turn 1 now with Pukari is incredibly useful. 1 Altergeist Prime Banshee, Link 3. During the main phase, quick effect, tribute an Altergeist monster, special summon 1 Altergeist monster from your deck to a zone this card points to. Just again allows you to trade out for the monster that you need at that point, helping you toolbox them. And then again, if it goes from field to grave, target an Altergeist card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. We're not making this very often because we don't need to, because it's a Link 3 that requires some investment, and generally we're winning off the strength of our traps and cards like Hextia, whereas this doesn't further the control game plan in the same way. However, what we are playing 3 of is Altergeist Memory Gant, and the reason we're playing 3 of this is because it's our win condition in the battle phase. This card helps us OTK really, really easily, which is something Altergeist obviously struggles with. By tributing one of the monster, gains attack equal to that tributed monster's attack on the field. If this card destroys a monster I battle, destroy a monster your opponent controls can make a second attack in a row, and if this card would be destroyed, banish 1 monster from your graveyard instead. It's a very sticky Link 4. It ends the battle phase. No, it doesn't put any restriction on other monsters attacking, so you can attack with something else, tribute it off, and then use Memory Gant's effect to gain attack and attack twice. We play 3 because we don't want to banish all the copies. We want 1 copy, so we have the option to just suddenly win the game out of nowhere. For the generic links, we play 1 Almiraj and 2 Linkuriboh. Ideally, this would be 3 Linkuriboh, but Linkuriboh is really expensive for a card that's had as many reprints as it has, so we play 1 Almiraj as well. These are link 1s for your Meluseek, to link it off and get a search, and obviously Linkuriboh has a very nice protection effect as well that is very, very useful, but their main function is to link off your Meluseek, get a search, and go from there. 1 copy of Relinquished Anima. This is another card that we can use to get a search with Meluseek, but also has the bonus of giving us a form of removal going second. Allowing us to obviously link off the Meluseek, point this towards a monster they have on the field, and absorb it and get rid of those difficult to out monsters. We're then playing the Light and the Dark Charmer as the 2 best generic Charmers that we can make. Multifaker is Dark, Veiler, and I believe Marionetta are light monsters, which gives you access to those. They help you res stuff from your opponent's graveyard, which again is useful for climbing into cards like Nightmare Unicorn, giving you that extra push to push for game, and just, again, helping you search if they are destroyed by something. Very, very good, very, very generic. We won't make them every single game, but you'll be glad to have them when they do come up. And then finally, what deck profile would be complete without playing the 2 best generic Nightmares? I was originally going to put a copy of Nightmare Cerberus in here as well, but that's hit nearly £5 a copy, which is ridiculous for that card that sees very, very little play at the moment. But anyway, you know what Phoenix and Unicorn do now. One gets rid of spells and traps, the other gets rid of problematic cards. Very generic, very useful, and very, very cheap, which is the most important fact. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the deck. Altergeist is a deck that is very controversial in the metagame. Some people love it, some people hate it, but the main draw to it at the moment is you get the complete deck for the price. There are very few cuts. The cuts are hand traps, and the cuts are in the extra deck that are corner cases, and oftentimes you'd be banishing them anyway, which means that it doesn't really matter what they are. They could be blank cards for all you care. They're just strictly better in those few situations. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you all again soon. Thanks for watching.